Hey everybody, Blaise here, and welcome to another episode of Aaron's Art Tips. Okay, so today I want to talk to you about some principles in drawing, but they can also be applied to photography and that sort of thing. So I'm trying to kind of shoot a big net out there for everybody. If you remember way back in my very first episode of Aaron's Art Tips, I talked about avoiding evenness in your compositions. Well, today I'm going to talk about line. And so what I'm going to be talking about today is specifically how you see the line of when you're creating objects and that sort of thing. So we're going to talk about straights against curves, or another way of saying it is complex against simple. Okay, so we got straights against curves or complex against simple. And we're talking specifically about line, not so much about composition. I think we're built as human beings to see contrast. I think it's what enabled us to survive back when we were prey. When you see something move quickly against a field of something that's not moving, you react to it. And the same thing is we react in the same way when we look at art, when we hear music. Anything that is different than the background is going to draw our attention. Okay, and so this is how when you're drawing, you can avoid evenness in your line work in your drawing. Okay, and let me show you what I'm talking about. I've prepared a few sketches here. Here are some figure sketches and anatomy sketches that I just prepared. And I'm going to pull these up. And this is something that we've talked about for years and years in the animation industry. And we talked about it a little bit when I was in school, but it was really about animation where I really started to hear about this stuff. And it really makes sense when you're trying to get your shorthand, when you're trying to get the dynamic characters drawn quickly. Because these straights against curves, it tends to be, it's stylizing a little bit, but what it is it's strengthening what you already see in nature, okay? So let's start with the obvious. Let's go with this guy making a muscle up here, and you can see the example I'm making is you've got this nice straight and a straight here against all this complexity, these curves. Now we have curves, we have muscles bulging up, okay? And it feels nice and dynamic. If I were, let me get a brush here. If I were to draw this arm and I do all this stuff here and make it just doesn't feel as dynamic. I'm doing a very bad drawing, but if I make curves against curves, it starts feeling like this big balloony looking mess. But when you start mixing your curves against your straights, it starts to feel dynamic. Look at this. This figure right here, this dancer. And what I chose to do here is kind of take this line of action from the back of the head, and you really can see the simplicity of line all the way through the front of the body, the front of the leg, all the way up the neck into the back of the head. Now, if you look at the opposite side, look at all this complexity on the left side. So I've got a nice straight against a complex, curvy left side there. Same thing about the arms. If I blow this up even more, and we look at the arms, look how I chose to, simplify the top, go nice and straight, very, very definite in the direction of the arms, and then this nice curves underneath. It just makes it feel more dynamic. Same with the character here. I've got all this complexity on the right side and nice, simple straights on the left, okay? Now, when we get into anatomy, obviously, this is a pretty no-brainer. You got this nice straight right down the middle of the legs with the complexity on either side. But even if I drew one of those legs kind of broken out, let's say it's running, this character's running and taking a step forward, I would, probably draw this character like so, and I'd still, or walking, let's do him walking. You could have like there. So look, straight, curve, straight, curve. All right, and it makes the drawing more dynamic. Look what I did with the hand here. Nice and strong straights against complexity all along here, right down to the fingers. See, straight, 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 curves. I'm always thinking about how I can play those dynamic straights and curves against each other. They don't always have to be literal. It doesn't have to be a perfectly straight, ruler-driven line. But it's, like I said, it's more in the realm of simple against complex. If you look at what I've done here with this arm, I've gone very simple along the edge of the arm here, and look at the complexity on the left side. Okay? Let's jump away from human anatomy for a little bit, and let's go over to some animals that I sketched. So here we've got a couple of animals, and look at the cat first. If you look at just the overall cat, you've got this nice, long, flowing, simple line of action along here, along with all this complexity. And you go, well, that's obvious. It is obvious, but you got to carry those ideas throughout all of your drawing. So here we're looking at the leg. I've got a straight and a basic straight there against curve and complexity. You know, all of this, a straight in the head against curves and complexity. Okay, think about those types of things when you're drawing. Here in this blue heron that I sketched, here I've got alternating curve against straight going back and forth. So I've got, you know, curve here, straight, straight, curve, but then I've got curve over here, and it goes straight here and curve. So look for the flows in nature, how those types of things move through. I chose to do this rhino because I like to go to the zoo or wildlife centers or draw from nature, that sort of thing. I love to sketch from life. And way, way, way back when I was an intern, years and years ago for Disney, I was working under one of the greatest animators ever. His name is Glenn Keane. And this is in 1988. And I was going to the zoo and doing zoo animal drawings and bringing them back in for Glenn to go over and critique me on. And I had done this drawing of a rhino that I just kind of, you know, it was much like this, except underneath I had all the legs sprawled out and everything was kind of it kind of looked like, if you just looked at the silhouette, it looked like a Rorschach test. It was just like a big ink blotch. And Glenn sat down and he started explaining to me about straights and curves. It was the first time I had ever heard it. And about how you can create weight and make your drawings more dynamic. And so he sat down and he redrew my drawing, much in the same way that I drew here, with this really strong straight and these strong curves on top. And all of a sudden now this rhino had so much weight, it felt like this big flour sack that was sitting on the floor or on the ground. And it was something that really stuck with me. And so ever since then, you know, throughout all the years of animating that I did at Disney, you were always thinking about how dynamic can we make these drawings. And one of the best ways of doing that is finding your straights and your curves and alternating them and simplifying your drawings down to that. Okay, and like I said, if you're a photographer, think about when you're posing your characters, if you're doing figurative photography, think about your posing and how you can find simple areas against complex areas in the silhouettes of your characters. But even if you're a landscape photographer, a lot of the same principles apply there, where whether you're looking at a horizon line, you're looking at trees, wood, whatever, your straights and curves apply there for interest, okay? Because remember, if you have something that's all straights and jagged, it's going to be boring. If you have something that's all curves, it's going to be bubbly, it can be boring. But when you start mixing the two together, you come up with something that's much more dynamic. Like I said, these are stylized, but it's up to us as artists to take what we see in nature and push it and make it a stronger statement if possible, okay? So go out until next week when I come back and have my next tip. Why don't you spend the week trying some of these straights and curves, applying those to your drawings and see if it helps. I'll guarantee you'll make it a bit more dynamic, okay? So once again, until next week, I'll talk to you then. Thanks. Bye.